They were laughing behind my back before the ink even dried on the check. I just transferred $70,000, everything I had saved over the last 8 years, into my father's account to save the family house from foreclosure. I did it because they were desperate, because they came to me with teary eyes and trembling voices, because I was raised to believe that family comes first. But the next day, I heard my brother say it through the door while I was helping Grandma sort her medication. He probably thinks this makes him a hero. Please, the guy lives alone and has no kids. What else is he gonna do with it? And then the laughter. My mother, my sisters, even Dad, the people I just bailed out. My name is Elliot. I'm 30 years old. Systems engineer out of Denton, Texas. No wife, no drama, no debt. Just a quiet apartment, a structured life, and until a few days ago, exactly $71,426 in my savings. I didn't even blink when they called. Grandma was crying. The bank was seizing the house. The mortgage was in default. I asked how much. My dad hesitated. 70, he said. Maybe 75, but 70 would keep us in. So I wired it. No lecture, no questions. I just did it. They didn't even say thank you. Not properly. I brushed it off. Maybe they were embarrassed. Maybe they didn't know how to say it. But something felt wrong from the start. And it got worse fast. The next morning, I showed up early with something they didn't know about. A second gift. I'd bought a used Chevy Traverse. Clean title. Low mileage. New tires. It was meant for Grandma, easier than the rust bucket she'd been driving since 2003. I pulled into the driveway and called them out. Got something to show you. They came outside one by one, blinking into the sun. My brother frowned. You buy that? For Grandma. Silence. Then Mom crossed her arms. Is this a show now? You trying to prove something? I looked at her, then Dad. Then Grandma, who stood there quietly, her lips pressed together. I thought it'd help, I said. Since the old car's We're not a charity case, Elliot, my sister snapped. That was it? No thanks. No appreciation. Just suspicion. Contempt. So I said it loud enough for everyone to hear. Good. Because I'll return it. Let the dealership know the family decided they're better off walking. I got into the car and drove it right off the lot. I didn't see it, but Grandma followed me. I only noticed her when she opened the passenger door at the end of the block, climbed in, and said 6 words that would change everything. They don't deserve what you gave. We didn't say anything for the first few blocks. Just drove. I waited for her to scold me, tell me I overreacted, that they were just stressed. But she didn't. She just stared out the window, hands folded neatly in her lap, quiet as snowfall. You sure you want to be here? I asked finally. Her answer was calm. Final. I've been wanting to leave that house for years. I glanced over. She wasn't crying. No shaking voice. No drama. Just peace. Like something heavy had finally been set down. I saw the way they talked about you when you weren't around, she continued. Even before you helped. They always thought you were just the background son. The quiet one. Reliable. Convenient. They never saw what you carried. I didn't know what to say to that. So I said nothing. We drove back to my apartment, a clean, 2-bedroom walk-up near the university. Nothing fancy. But it was mine. She looked around like she was touring a palace. I'll take the guest room, she said with a small smile. And I'll cook. Fair? I nodded. Fair. That night, while we ate in silence, she told me something I'd never heard before. I've been putting money aside, she said. Little by little after your grandfather passed. Investments. A few bonds. Some land in West Texas I sold last year. She looked me in the eye. It's a lot, Elliot. More than anyone knows. And I've decided it's yours. I almost laughed. Grandma, I don't. No, she cut in sharply. You do. You've been the only one who's ever helped without strings. Without keeping score. You're the only one who comes to visit when nothing's wrong. The only one who listens. Then her expression darkened. But they've been circling. Your father, your uncle, even your sisters. Asking questions. Digging. She leaned forward. So I've started moving things. Quietly. Into your name. I stared at her. Speechless. This wasn't about money anymore. This was about something deeper, trust. Dignity. Recognition. They're going to notice soon, she said softly. And they're not going to like it. I took a deep breath. Then I guess it's time I stopped playing the quiet son. Because now I knew what they were really after, and it wasn't just my savings. It was everything she still owned. And I wasn't going to let them take it. The first call came 2 days later. My dad. Hey, have you seen Grandma? She's not at the house. I kept my voice flat. She's here. A pause. Then what do you mean there? I mean she packed a bag and came with me. Voluntarily. More silence. She's not well, Elliot, he said, lowering his voice like he was doing me a favor. You know how she gets confused. We're worried. No, you're not, I said. You're worried she left with her documents. Click. The next morning, I found my email flooded, vague legal threats from a cousin I hadn't heard from in years, veiled messages from my sisters, and one snide text from my brother. Guess the basement dweller thinks he's in charge now. I didn't reply. Instead, I took Grandma to my credit union. We met with my advisor, a man named Curtis I trusted more than most people I'd grown up with. She laid everything out, land titles, bonds, account info, even handwritten ledgers she'd kept for decades. It was nearly $980,000 in total assets. My hands actually shook. Curtis looked between us. You're sure? He asked her gently. I am, she said, eyes clear. And I want it all in a living trust. Elliot as the beneficiary. I've already drawn up the will. We filed the paperwork that afternoon. By dinner time, the family WhatsApp group, the one I was quietly removed from years ago, was apparently on fire. One of my sisters, Melanie, showed up outside my apartment that night, all crocodile tears and fake warmth. Can we just talk? She sniffed. I stepped outside, closed the door behind me. Talk. She smiled. Too sweet. Too rehearsed. We're worried about you. About Grandma. She's not herself lately. Don't, I said flatly. Don't insult her to my face. She dropped the act instantly. You think this is going to last? You think you're going to just take over everything and we'll let it slide? I didn't flinch. I'm not taking over anything, I said. She's giving me what's hers. And none of you noticed until she stopped paying your credit card bills. Her face went pale. Then she hissed, you're not even Dad's real son. Maybe don't get too comfortable playing air. And with that, she walked off into the night. But her words stuck. Not because they hurt, but because she just handed me the next thread I needed to pull. I didn't sleep that night. I laid on the couch, staring at the ceiling, Melanie's words repeating in my head like a bad loop. You're not even Dad's real son. I thought back, years of cold shoulders, strange tension, the way my father never really looked at me the same as he did my brother. I told myself it was just a personality clash. That I was too quiet, too different. Now I wasn't so sure. The next morning, while Grandma was out in the community garden planting basil like nothing had happened, I made a call. The county clerk's office, birth records division. Hi, this is Elliot Sanders. I'm requesting a certified copy of my birth certificate. I gave them my information. My mother's name. My father's. The woman on the phone paused. There's a note on your file. It says the paternity section was amended in 1996. I was 10 years old in 1996. Amended how? I can't share that over the phone, she said carefully. But if you come in with ID, I can release the certified document. By 1:30 p.m., I was standing in a cold lobby holding a manila envelope with my name on it. Inside, my birth certificate. And just like she said, there it was. Under father's name blank. Amended from Martin Sanders. The original had been removed. Scrubbed. My father was never legally my father. I walked outside, sat on a bench, and just stared at the traffic. It didn't hurt. It didn't shock me. If anything, it made sense. Explained the resentment, the difference, the way he always held me at a distance. Like he'd raised someone else's mistake. But what really struck me was this. They all knew. My mother. My father. My siblings. And no one ever said a word. Not even Grandma until I asked. That night over tea, I told her what I'd found. She didn't look surprised. I wanted to tell you when you turned 18, she said quietly. But your mother, she forbade it. Said it would ruin the family. She already ruined it, I said. Martin wasn't your father, she continued. Not biologically. Your mother had an affair. A short one. The man disappeared before she even knew she was pregnant. But your father, Martin, agreed to raise you as his own. I nodded slowly, then resented me for it the rest of my life. She didn't argue. But then she leaned forward, her voice low. Elliot, there's something else. Your biological father? He didn't exactly disappear. She reached into a drawer and pulled out a letter. Yellowed. Faded. Addressed to my mother. I found this after your grandfather passed. She never told anyone. But I think it's time you saw it. I unfolded the letter with trembling hands. The return address said Austin, Texas. The signature? It was a name I didn't recognize. But I would soon. And it would change everything I thought I knew again. His name was Raymond Ellis. The letter was dated April 3rd, 1996, the year my birth certificate was amended. I know I messed up, it read. I should have stayed or at least written sooner. But I need to know, is he mine? If he is, I want to do what I can. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want the truth. There was no response attached. No return letter. Just that single page, folded neatly, sealed away like a threat. Did she ever reply? I asked. Grandma shook her head. Not that I know of. She burned most of the old correspondence after that. But this one? I found it tucked inside a cookbook. Hidden but not destroyed. I ran a search that night. Raymond Ellis, Austin, Texas. The name wasn't common. Within 10 minutes, I'd found 3 possible matches. One was an insurance claims adjuster. One was deceased. And one was the founder of a private engineering firm. Ellis Tech Solutions. I clicked the link. The photo hit me like a slap. Dark hair, sharp nose, same deep-set eyes I saw in the mirror every day. His bio said he was a retired systems engineer. Lived in Austin. Started his company in the mid-90s. Married, no listed children. No children he knew about anyway. I didn't tell Grandma I'd found him. Not yet. There was too much spinning in my head and more immediate problems to deal with. Because while I was chasing my past, the rest of the family had gotten busy. The very next morning, a certified letter arrived at my apartment. Thick. Official-looking. I opened it slowly. It was a petition for guardianship. They were claiming Grandma was unwell. That she was being manipulated. That I'd coerced her into changing financial documents and was isolating her from her family of origin. There were signatures at the bottom. My mother. My brother. My sisters. They'd even submitted evidence, screenshots of texts taken out of context. A statement from a family friend who hadn't seen Grandma in months. And a letter typed and signed stating concerns over her cognitive decline. I handed it to Grandma wordlessly. She read it without flinching. When she finished, she folded it once, set it on the table, and said, "Then I guess it's time we called my lawyer." I didn't ask questions. Just nodded. Because I knew this was no longer just betrayal. This was war. Her lawyer's name was Evelyn Grant, sharp eyes, sharper tongue. She'd been managing Grandma's affairs for over a decade. And from the way she stormed into my apartment with a briefcase full of receipts, I could tell she'd been waiting for this moment. They think she's weak, Evelyn said flatly. They think because she's old, they can put her in a corner and take everything she owns. Unfortunately for them, they've grossly underestimated her and me. We sat at my kitchen table while she laid out the plan. The trust is airtight, she explained. Signed, witnessed, notarized, filed in 2 places. But this guardianship petition? It's an attempt to override all of that. If a judge grants it, they can move to revoke the trust, liquidate assets, even put her in a facility. Grandma sipped her tea like they were trying to steal her garden tools, not her life. I'm not going anywhere, she said calmly. And I'm certainly not leaving Elliot. Evelyn nodded. Good. Then we fight. Quietly, legally, but without mercy. That week was a blur of paperwork, affidavits, and calls. Evelyn pulled medical records, statements from Grandma's primary doctor, even psychological assessments from a recent checkup. Everything came back clean. Meanwhile, I gathered my own files, photos, text messages, voicemails, all showing Grandma lucid, engaged, making decisions clearly and independently. Then I started digging into my siblings. I found something interesting. 2 of them, my brother and youngest sister, had recently filed for bankruptcy. The other? Had $40,000 in credit card debt and a pending civil suit from a failed boutique business she launched with borrowed money. And they were banking on Grandma to bail them out. They just didn't expect her to change the locks on the vault. By Friday, Evelyn filed a countermotion, not just a defense, but an attack. A formal notice of intent to pursue damages for defamation and undue harassment of a protected individual. She smiled when she hit send. That'll wake them up. And it did. The next day, Mom called. Voicemail. Nervous tone. Elliot, can we just talk? Please don't do this. We're family. Funny how that word always seems to mean do what we say. But I didn't respond. Because I wasn't the quiet son anymore. And because they were about to lose more than just control. They hired a lawyer. A flashy one. You could tell by the letterhead embossed, gold-trimmed, like it was announcing royalty, not litigation. His name was Alan DeWitt, and from what Evelyn told me, he specialized in probate disputes with high-asset elderly clients. Translation, he made a living convincing judges that old people didn't know what they were doing. They were escalating. The court date was set 3 weeks out. In the meantime, DeWitt filed a formal request for a psychological evaluation. They wanted Grandma tested. Independently. Evelyn didn't even blink. We'll agree. But only under 2 conditions. 1, we pick the evaluator. And 2, the results are sealed until the judge reviews them directly. DeWitt pushed back. She pushed harder. And the judge, likely annoyed by the sudden flood of motions, sided with us. The evaluation happened on a Thursday morning. A 2-hour session with a court-appointed neuropsychologist. I wasn't allowed in the room. But when Grandma came out, she was smiling like she'd just played chess and won in 12 moves. How'd it go? I asked. She leaned in. I told him the 3 branches of government, recited Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, then beat him at a game of logic riddles he thought I wouldn't know. I grinned. You didn't. I did, she said, deadpan. I also told him about my land holdings in West Texas and asked if he wanted investment advice. The next day, Evelyn called. Evaluation came back clean. No signs of cognitive impairment. The doctor even added a note, said her executive functioning is above average for her age group. DeWitt was silent after that. No more motions. No more threats. But I could feel the pressure building. Then came the real twist. An anonymous tip left in Evelyn's mailbox. A printed packet, unmarked envelope. Inside, copies of emails between my mother and DeWitt. They'd been planning this guardianship for over a year. And not just to protect Grandma. They were already drafting plans to liquidate her assets, including the house, and move her to a senior facility in San Antonio. One with a corporate contract tied to DeWitt's firm. This wasn't family concern. This was a hostile takeover. And now? We had proof. I walked into Evelyn's office with the packet in hand. She didn't speak, just flipped through it page by page, her mouth tightening with every line. When she reached the email outlining asset realignment options, she looked up at me. This is conspiracy, Elliot. Coordinated. If we file this with the judge, this isn't just defense anymore. This is going to feel like a reckoning. Then let's make it one, I said. We added the emails to our filing under intent to defraud and displace. Evelyn added her own note for the judge, evidence of premeditated financial exploitation masked as familial concern. The hearing was now just 10 days away. And the family? They started unraveling. My brother showed up unannounced at my apartment. No warning. No call. Just banging on the door like a man who'd realized too late that the door didn't belong to him anymore. You really think you've won? He snapped when I opened it. You think you get to just erase us? I didn't say a word. Just held up the packet, the one with his name at the bottom of those planning emails. His eyes widened. Just for a second. Where'd you get that? Someone who still has a conscience, I said. You should try borrowing it sometime. He tried to laugh. You think she's gonna leave you everything? That makes you a target, man. Not a hero. I looked him dead in the eye. I don't need her money. I need you out of her way. He didn't like that. But he didn't have a comeback either. He left. Fast. That night, Jenna, my middle sister, sent a group message. Just a single sentence. You'll regret doing this, Elliot. But that was the moment I realized something important. They weren't fighting to protect Grandma. They were fighting because they'd already spent the money in their heads. And now the future they thought was theirs wasn't. The next day, the judge issued a summons. All parties. In person. 10 days out. And the final nail? Was still waiting in a frame above Grandma's bed. A document Evelyn had drafted years ago, long before any of this started. Her advance directive. Signed. Notarized. Stating exactly what she wanted in the event of cognitive decline and exactly who she trusted to decide it. One name. Mine. The hearing was held in a small probate courtroom. Pale green walls. Flickering fluorescent lights. It looked more like a DMV than a place where families fall apart. But make no mistake, that's exactly what was about to happen. They filed in slowly, my mother in a pearl gray suit too expensive for her declared finances, my brother in a cheap blazer, eyes flicking between the bailiff and the exits, my sisters whispering behind tight smiles. All seated behind their attorney, Alan DeWitt, who looked like he hadn't lost a case in years and didn't plan to start now. Grandma and I sat quietly at the other table. Evelyn stood beside us, flipping through her notes, calm as a storm before it hits. The judge entered. Gavel. Formalities. Then it began. DeWitt stood first. Your Honor, this is not an attempt to punish or control. This is a family trying to do what's best for an aging matriarch showing clear signs of diminished capacity. He rattled off examples, none based in fact. Claimed she forgot appointments. Misplaced documents. Became erratic. All of it rehearsed. Then he submitted evidence. Most of it was hearsay. One printed screenshot of a text message allegedly from Grandma where she'd forgotten a birthday. It was weak, but in court we can still plant seeds. Then Evelyn stood. She didn't raise her voice. Didn't pace. Didn't posture. She simply handed the judge a folder. Your Honor, in that file you'll find 2 medical evaluations confirming full cognitive capacity, a notarized living trust predating this petition, a durable power of attorney assigning rights to Mr. Elliot Sanders, and an advance directive executed in 2017 naming him as the sole healthcare proxy. She paused. And lastly, a printed copy of internal emails correspondence between the petitioners and Mr. DeWitt outlining a coordinated attempt to forcibly transfer the respondent's assets into a corporate vehicle partially owned by the petitioners. DeWitt stiffened. The judge read for a long time. 10 minutes of pure, unbroken silence. Then he looked at my family. And he said the words I'll never forget. Unless you wish to be held in contempt, I suggest you withdraw your petition immediately. My mother opened her mouth. But no sound came out. The judge turned to Grandma. Ma'am, do you feel safe? She nodded once. Very. Do you feel pressured to assign your affairs to your grandson? No. It was my choice. He's the only one who's never asked for anything. The judge nodded. Petition denied. Case dismissed. Gavel. Done. No dramatic shouting. No security escort. Just quiet devastation. And for the first time in my life, I watched them sit in silence while I stood in peace. They didn't walk out of that courtroom, they scattered. Like roaches when the light comes on. But I knew it wasn't over. Not with people like them. People who confuse losing with injustice. People who don't understand what no means unless it comes with teeth. 3 days later, I got the call. Blocked number. I almost didn't pick up. But curiosity won. Elliot, the voice said. My mother. Cold. Calculated. We're not done. Sounds like the judge thought otherwise. She ignored it. Your birth certificate, she said quietly. You looked into it. I said nothing. You know the truth now. That your real father walked away. That he didn't want you. Still, I stayed silent. That man didn't just leave, she continued. He tried to come back. You think that letter Grandma gave you was the whole story? She picked him over us. Over your father. And now she's doing it again. I almost laughed. No. She's finally choosing me. She paused just for a second. Then the venom came. If you don't walk away from the trust, the house, all of it, I'll tell the press. I'll say you manipulated an old woman for her estate. That you forged her signature. That you're a disgruntled son trying to punish his real family. You think that'll stick? I asked. No, she said. But it'll make your life hard. And it'll make hers miserable. I took a deep breath. Then I hung up. Didn't shout. Didn't threaten. I just sent the call recording to Evelyn. 10 minutes later, she called me back. She just made your case airtight, Evelyn said, and opened herself to slander, coercion, and elder intimidation charges. I didn't smile. I didn't need to, because I finally saw it clearly. This wasn't about money. It was about control. And now? They had none. The next morning, I sent out exactly 2 emails. The first went to our family group thread, the one I hadn't spoken in since 2019. I kept it short. Grandma is safe. The trust is intact. Legal threats will be forwarded to counsel. Future communication is no longer welcome. Elliot. The second went to Raymond Ellis, the man I now knew was my biological father. I kept that one shorter. If you're the Raymond Ellis who wrote to my mother in 1996, I believe I'm your son. We don't need to meet. I just want clarity. I'm not here to blame you, just to know the truth. He replied 3 hours later. Elliot, I always wondered if she ever told you. I meant what I wrote in that letter. If you want to talk, I'd be honored. I never stopped thinking about you. I didn't know what to feel reading that. But I did know one thing. The man I had called Dad my entire life had done nothing but punish me for a decision I never made. And this stranger, this man I shared a face with, was offering more honesty in 2 sentences than I'd ever gotten from the family who raised me. But I wasn't rushing into anything. Not yet. Right now, I had one priority, peace. And that meant removing every last hold my family had on Grandma. Together, we moved her name off everything tied to the old house. Canceled joint accounts. Revoked shared cards. Changed her phone number. And filed a notice of limited contact with every lawyer, hospital, and financial institution in Denton County. They couldn't touch her. But I still had one move left. One thing they didn't know I'd been planning. Back when they begged me for that $70,000, the money that saved their house, I'd paid through a wire transfer. But the terms? They were documented. Because I didn't just give them the money. I loaned it. Under a family repayment contract I'd written myself, signed by my father, notarized at the local bank. A contract they assumed I'd forget. They were wrong. I pulled the contract from my desk drawer, crisp, stamped, and legally binding. It wasn't flashy. Just 1 page. but it spelled everything out in black and white. $70,000 loan to Martin Sanders, to be repaid in full within 18 months. Interest-free. Failure to repay triggers asset lien on jointly owned property. I'd written it when I still believed we were a family. Still thought they'd pay me back, or at least try. Instead, they laughed behind my back, called me a sucker, mocked me for not having a wife, a house, or the real life they bragged about between broken marriages and credit defaults. Yeah? Now they'd pay. I walked into the courthouse and filed a lien against the house. The same house I saved from foreclosure. The same house they were now trying to sell, according to public listings, probably to cash out while they still could. Too late. That lien hit the title within 48 hours. Which meant no sale, no closing, no refinancing, no equity withdrawal, nothing without my signature. And the cherry on top? Every interested buyer would now see a pending claim attached to the property. A legal red flag they couldn't ignore. That afternoon, my brother called, finally understanding what I'd done. "You're out of your mind," he barked. "You're going to ruin us over a stupid loan?" "It's not stupid," I said. "It's signed. You're not getting a dime, Elliot." "I don't need a dime," I said, calm. "I just need to make sure you don't get one either." Then I hung up. I wasn't trying to bankrupt them, but I was making sure they felt every ounce of the disrespect they poured into me for 30 years. And they weren't the only ones who noticed. Because 2 days later, Grandma's phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. I answered. "Is this Elliot Sanders?" the voice asked. "Yes. This is Norichan, personal assistant to Raymond Ellis. He'd like to meet in person." Raymond Ellis didn't live in a mansion. He lived in a 2-story home just outside Austin, quiet, modern, understated. The kind of place owned by someone who didn't need to prove anything. I pulled into the driveway with no idea what to expect. No idea who I was about to meet or what he'd want from me. But when he opened the door, I knew. Same eyes. Same crooked half-smile. Same pause before you speak instinct. "Elliot," he said, stepping back. "Thank you for coming." He offered me coffee. I declined. I wasn't here for small talk. "I need to know," I said. "Why you left?" He didn't get defensive. He didn't deflect. He just nodded slowly and said, "Because your mother told me to." He walked over to a drawer, pulled out a letter, the second one he'd written weeks after the first. "She responded once," he said. "Told me to stay away. Said you were better off not knowing me. Said she'd already fixed it." "Fixed it how?" I asked. "She said Martin agreed to raise you as his own. That you'd never know the difference unless I interfered." I looked at the letter. It was real. The handwriting was hers. "I wanted to fight," he said. "But I was younger then. My own life was falling apart. I didn't have money. Didn't have a leg to stand on. So you walked," I said quietly. "I stepped aside," he replied. "Not because I didn't want you, but because I thought maybe she was right. Maybe what I wanted didn't matter." I believed him. Not because I needed a father, but because, for the first time in this entire mess, someone had told the truth without agenda. He walked me out to the porch as I got ready to leave. "Elliot," he said, just before I reached the car. "I've been following the case. I saw the news. You handled it like a man should, quiet, focused, fair. And if you ever want to build something together, a business, a trust, anything, my door's open." I nodded. "I'm not ready for that yet," I said. "No pressure. But I appreciate it. All of it." He smiled, and I left. When I got back to Denton, Grandma was waiting on the porch. She handed me a letter from the county clerk's office. Inside was a final notice. The petitioners had formally withdrawn all claims. No apology, just silence, which was perfect, because for the first time in my life, that silence belonged to me. A week after the case was closed, the family made one last attempt to sneak in through the back door. I got an alert from the county recorder's office. Someone had tried to file a quitclaim deed on Grandma's house. They'd used an outdated version, the kind that didn't match the trust's title. They were trying to transfer ownership to my mother. Sloppy, desperate, illegal. I sent the alert to Evelyn. By lunchtime, she'd filed a cease and desist along with a motion to notify the state attorney general's office of attempted title fraud. By dinner time, I got a call. Blocked number. Again. I let it ring. They weren't calling to apologize. They were calling because they'd finally realized something they never thought possible. They had no power left. The house wasn't in Grandma's name anymore. It was held in a generational trust, one I now managed. The land? Retitled. Accounts? separated. Medical proxies, financial POAs, everything all locked down tighter than Fort Knox. And them? They were locked out. Permanently. I sat on the balcony that night, watching the lights of Denton flicker in the distance. Grandma came out with 2 mugs of tea. We sat quietly like we always did. "You could have burned it all down," she said after a while. "Didn't need to," I said. "I just turned the lights off." She chuckled. "They're never going to forgive you for this." "I didn't ask for forgiveness," I said. "I asked for distance." She nodded slowly. "You got it." I took a long sip of tea, then pulled the last envelope from my pocket, the notarized cancellation of the loan lien. I hadn't filed it yet, could have held onto it, could have made their lives a slow grind. But I didn't. I dropped it in the mailbox the next morning. Let them have the house, the one I paid for, because by then I had something more valuable: freedom, and the knowledge that no matter how they twisted the story, I never stooped, never shouted, never begged. I just walked away, with the only person who ever saw me clearly walking right beside me. They thought the money was the win, the house, the savings, the inheritance. But what they never understood, not once, was that revenge isn't about taking. It's about choosing not to give anymore. No more favors, no more explanations, no more access. A month after everything settled, I formally dissolved all joint financial ties. Grandma's assets were rolled into a trust with a corporate trustee and clear succession plans, all managed by me. No one could contest it. No one could touch it. Not without walking through the fire of court-ordered hell. Then came the final stroke. An estate letter. Evelyn sent it on Grandma's behalf to every family member. Not just my mother and siblings, but the cousins, the uncle who stayed silent, the aunts who whispered but never spoke up. It read, "This letter serves as notice that I have updated all estate plans. If you're receiving this, it means I've chosen not to include you. That was not an accident. It was a decision made after years of observation, silence, and disappointment. Elliot stood alone when the rest of you stepped back. He is my legacy now, and I hope you all learn the cost of entitlement because you paid it in full." That was it. No dramatic signature, no final kiss-off, just fact. One of my sisters tried to post a rant about me on Facebook the next week. Said I manipulated an elderly woman into cutting everyone out. Claimed I was a snake in a cardigan. She forgot I had the text she sent threatening Grandma. I posted a single screenshot. She deleted the whole account. And just like that, they went quiet again. Now, Grandma lives in peace. She gardens, reads, writes letters to old friends. She doesn't flinch when the phone rings anymore. Doesn't jump when someone knocks. And me? I built something. My own consultancy. Clean clients. No noise. Sometimes I hear about my siblings. Credit issues. Lawsuits. One of them tried to flip the house and lost money on it. Another got scammed into an NFT grift. They haven't spoken to Grandma in months. She doesn't miss them. Neither do I. Because when you stop feeding what drains you, you realize something. You were never the weak one. You were just surrounded by people who mistook your kindness for a vault they hadn't earned. So I locked the vault. And I walked away, not to punish them, but to finally protect myself.